Terrific. Well, welcome to the Worship Design Studio webinar. Before every season, about 8 weeks before every season begins, every liturgical season, I have one of these webinars that's called Here It Comes Again. And amazingly enough, I know we're not even into Advent yet, doing Advent, but we are eight weeks before the Epiphany Plus season, which we call it in the Worship Design Studio, Epiphany Plus, which is Epiphany through Ash Wednesday. And of course, every year that season fluctuates depending on the date of Easter. Well, Easter is fairly late this year, so we've got 9 weeks between Epiphany and the beginning of Lent. If you're not a member of the Worship Design Studio, you may not know that we have 38, I think, templates for series ideas for all parts of the liturgical year, some lectionary, some non-lectionary. And so we're going to take a look at what's in the studio for Epiphany Plus season. And then we'll spend the last bit just talking a little bit about the season itself that would maybe prime the pump to your own series idea if our series don't look like they would float your boat. At any rate, I want to welcome you, whether you're a member or not, and say to you that if you would like to be a member and you're not a member, I want to invite you to email me at marcia@marciamcfee.com, and I will give you a coupon code for being on this webinar so you can get a little discount on the 1-year subscription. All right, so let's click on Seasons and Series here in the back, and that's going to take us to the Worship Design Studio materials for every season of the liturgical year. You can see the buttons at the bottom: Advent, Christmas, Epiphany Plus, Lent, Holy Week, Easter, Pentecost, Ordinary Time Summer, Ordinary Time Fall. I split Ordinary Time into 2 different because Ordinary Time is a big chunk of time. And then the last button there is about creating worship series that has lots of guides to help develop your team and the planning process so that you can really enjoy your creativity and not be doing things last minute. All right, so let's go into the Epiphany Plus page, and you can see that we have materials for every lectionary year. Now, just because this one says Epiphany Plus Materials Year A does not mean that it's only lectionary based. I have lots of non-lectionary ideas in every one of the materials, but I do have Year A, and then if you scroll down, you'll see there's Epiphany Plus Materials Year C and Year B. Let's go to Worship Series and see next what is in the Worship Design Studio for Epiphany Plus. Now, when you click on Worship Series, it shows you all 38 of our series. Now, if you want to just see what's up for Epiphany, you're going to click on the Epiphany Plus box there and click on Filter. This brings up the 6 series that were designed specifically for this time of year. And let me just tell you a little bit about these. The one I'm working on right now, for next year, for 2014, is called Who Are You? Can you hear the Who singing in the background? You know, who are you? Who. In fact, CSI, of course, used that song, that TV show. And so it's kind of, that's where I got the fingerprint idea here on this logo. What I found in the lectionary, and this is a lectionary-based one, I have some non-lectionary-based ones in here that I'll tell you about, but this one is based on lectionary Year A. And when I sort of did my digging into that this time, what I saw coming out of that lectionary was really a series of ideas about who we are to be. And so I thought, why don't we spend these 9 weeks, that's how many weeks we have in the Epiphany Plus season this year, these 9 weeks really talking about who we are, what's our identity, what are we called to do and be. And so that's where I went with this. Let me open up what's called an inspiration page. When you use our design application in the Worship Design Studio, the first thing that it does is it takes you through a process of creating an inspiration page. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we start with, the program asks you to pick 3, 4, or 5 pictures that will get really to the essence of the message of the series that you're that you're doing. So here's this wonderful picture. And by the way, the place where I get my pictures is called compfight.com. It's where you can find Creative Commons licensed photos that gives you the ability to use, adapt these pictures, and all you have to do is give credit to the photographer. And we do that in the Worship Design Studio. If you end up using these photos and things, we have where you can give credit to the photographers. But this is a really cool thing. There's another one that we use called Stock Exchange that also has Creative Commons pictures. But the synopsis for this series, I won't read you all of these synopses, but since this is the one I'm working on and one I'm really excited about right now, I'll just go ahead and read this to you. The beginning of a new calendar year is a time when we often reassess direction and ask questions yet again about who we are and where we are going in life. We make resolutions, we sign up at the gym again, we vow to be better people. This year we will take a deep journey into the question, who are you? We will discover that who we are is indelibly linked to whose we are. What amazing things could happen if you lived into your best, most passionate, loving self. Let's find out what transformations can happen in just 9 weeks. So this is an invitation to the community to come and take a personal journey and a communal journey into who we are and really see what transformations can happen. So a synopsis is something that I teach in the Worship Design Studio. That's a really good discipline for everybody to use, to write a 3 to 4 sentence synopsis of what the series is. You can use this in publicity, call it evangelism, call it publicity, it doesn't matter. But you can use this in so many different ways. And it's really important to sort of tell people where you're going next on the spiritual journey. So what if you had, say, this inspiration page, you made it into a flyer, printed that out as a flyer, and were able to give that to people who came to Christmas Eve services. It's a great idea to do, to follow up, to have something concrete to say, come and join us. Even if you just came to Christmas Eve service and generally you only come Christmas Eve and Easter. Just for 9 weeks, let's see what we can do together in terms of transforming our lives and give them this flyer so that there's some incentive for them to consider coming back. So let's take a look then at, where was I? Worship series. At the different Sundays in this series. In the Worship Design Studio, you can click on this link called Worship, and it's going to open up and download a synopsis of every Sunday in the series. So you can see here I start on the first Sunday of the year, and we're going to be talking about Epiphany, the actual Epiphany Sunday, and so I call it Follow Your Star. Again, I'm not going to read through all of these, but the idea is understanding that there is purpose in our lives, that we can follow a star, we can vision, we can see, and we can discover who we are called to be. So following our star. The next Sunday, connecting with your belovedness. This is Baptism of the Lord Sunday, and so we have the story of Jesus' baptism. And that beautiful scripture that at Jesus' baptism, the heavens opened and the voice of God said, "This is my beloved, my son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." So connecting with our own belovedness. And what does that do to who we are called to be if we really believe that we are beloved of God? If we really live without the human fear of rejection, we know that we are accepted, what difference does that make to us in the way that we live our lives? So then week 3, know your name. The scriptures in the lectionary are, they're calling Jesus by many different names, Rabbi, Messiah, etc. And this is about knowing who we are, knowing our name. I think the Native American tradition of naming someone with a descriptor is really powerful. So that could even be part of what you do that Sunday. Again, in the Worship Design Studio, in just a couple of weeks, I will be posting a document that has actual resource ideas for every Sunday in the series. Music arts, visual arts, media arts, dramatic arts, and verbal arts. So, a lot of these ideas will be forthcoming in just a couple of weeks for this series. Claim Your Vocation is the next one. This is where Jesus is calling the disciples. And so asking ourselves, how are we disciples and how can we see our vocation? It may be the secular job that you have right now that is your vocation, but you don't actually see it as a vocation, as part of your discipleship. Well, maybe what if we see everything we do as part of our discipleship? How would that change the way that we see our work life? The next one, embody Beatitude living. In the lectionary, the Beatitudes fall on this Sunday. Frankly, I thought about doing a whole series based on the Beatitudes in Epiphany because there's 9 weeks and 9 fits perfectly into the Beatitudes, but I needed to do a lectionary series for the Worship Design Studio. So I didn't do that this time, but that's an idea that you could use this time if the Beatitudes seems like something that, if blessing is something that you think your congregation, might want to look at. So, live with integrity is the next one. Something that has integrity, is stable. So are all the parts of our lives really working toward the same message? Or are we self-divided? And then creating right relationships. Our identity is so wrapped up in our relationships. And so how does our relationship with others define us? How does living in right relationship with friend and stranger send reverberations into the world and into the future? The next Sunday is Go Beyond. The scriptures are talking about, go the second mile. So the question here, I sort of in the synopsis turn it to how can we go the extra mile as a church? And so asking the communal questions as well as the individual questions along the way is really an important thing to do. Finally, the last one is called Proclaim Transformation. This is Transfiguration Sunday. And so my idea is that the culmination of this series about who are you would be a time of testimony about the transformations people have seen in the last 9 weeks. So it could be very, very powerful since we've spent 9 weeks looking at our who we are, our place in the world, our passion, our vocation, our mission. Okay, so that's what I'm working on for Epiphany Plus this year. If that works for you, I'd love for you to use it. I have many churches in the Worship Design Studio. We have about 500 churches now in the Worship Design Studio. So every season there are many churches who use the one I'm working on, or they use some other ones. So let's take a look at some of these other ones. Again, when you're in the worship series link, you can click on Epiphany Plus, click on Filter, and it's going to show you only the Epiphany ones. So we looked at Who Are You? The Passionate Jesus was what I did last year, and it's non-lectionary, but it's based on a book. And every once in a while, I love to do worship series based on a book because I like to do a book study in conjunction with the worship series. And so that's what I did last year. It was a brand new book out then by Reverend Peter Wallace called The Passionate Jesus. And I loved this because Peter wrote, well, he said to me, and there's an interview in the Brainstorms. Let me show you. When you click on Brainstorms, you're going to see our ideas. I did an interview with a visual artist about what she would do for this series. And then I also did an interview with Peter Wallace, the author of the book. And what Peter said about this book is that, there's our image of Jesus sometimes is frozen in that, nice painting of Jesus with the lamb, and he's like looking up at heaven and so serene. And, that's one image of Jesus. But Jesus certainly wasn't the serene one all the time in his ministry and his life. And so what Peter does through his book is looks at several different emotions and how that showed up for Jesus and the role of emotions in our spiritual lives. So really fascinating. This is a 6-week series, so it would only take up part of the 9 weeks. So you could do a 3-week series and then follow it with a 6-week. Certainly 9 weeks is long enough to do a couple of series within it. let me show you while we're here just an example of the resources then that we post for this series. So it's always in a sticky note called Resource Ideas for this series. And then I click on the PDF. And this is what you get as a member of the Worship Design Studio. We're giving you absolutely concrete ideas for every Sunday. Some of them are based on the verbal arts, so some litanies or prayers, poems, quotes, that kind of thing. But also ideas for visual arts, ideas for music arts, dramatic arts. There's all kinds of ideas. Now, what we believe in the Worship Design Studio is that one size does not fit all. So we believe it's our job to just throw a bunch of ideas out for you, and then you can put them together in a way that works for your congregation, because some of these ideas will work for some congregations and not for others. So we just give you a bunch of ideas and then let you put that together. So just tons of ideas here. And that's just an example of what we give you to help you put things together. All right, so that's the passionate Jesus. He goes through the emotions. Let's see if I can remember. Anger, fear, grief, passion. I'm not going to remember the other two, but you get the idea. Again, using the book series, there's questions at the end of each chapter. So that's a wonderful way of extending the subject of worship into small group experience. Discipleship by the Sea is another Epiphany series that I put together. It's non-lectionary, and it looks just at scriptures in the book of Mark of Jesus at the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee. Now, I put this together after I used this theme for General Conference of the United Methodist Church in 2012 and adapted it for local church use. It does have 9 Sundays, so it works perfectly with the number of Sundays we have this year. But it really, what I did is I looked at all of the scriptures in Mark of Jesus at the shore of Sea of Galilee. There's 15, and so I just picked, my favorite 9 and then put them together in a series. So let me just open this up and I'll show you what each Sunday is called. Call is the first one. Invite, heal, listen, go, believe, trust, encounter, feed. And all of these words come out of the stories of Jesus at the shoreline. And really what he's calling us to do. He's calling us to be called and to call, to invite, to heal, to teach, all of these things. So that's what that series is about. All right, here's one of my favorite play on words for the Epiphany season, and that's bread, bath, and beyond. I've had so many churches in the Worship Design Studio use this series because it is such a wonderful, connection to the bed, bath, and beyond. Now, it's great for the beginning of the year because bread, bath, and beyond. Bread gives you Communion Sunday on the first Sunday of the year, of the month. Bath is baptism of the Lord, and then beyond. Now, you could do this as a 3-week series and just have bread, bath, and beyond. Or you could do like I did and have it as a longer series. Now, I based it on lectionary readings from year B. You could use the same idea and put different scriptures to it if you didn't want to use lectionary B in lectionary year A, if you wanted to make it a non-lectionary year, or you could take a look at lectionary year A and see what you might say beyond for all of those. So let me show you real quick what beyonds I used, so you can get an idea of what I mean. So bread, bath, and then beyond belief, beyond the horizon, beyond the boundaries, beyond the chaos, beyond the hype, beyond the fear. So you see, I've taken the scriptures and said, what are we being called beyond? So beyond fear, beyond boundaries. So that's the idea for that kind of a series. All right, so that's bread, bath, and beyond. For sake of life is based on lectionary year C. Again, if you're not a tried and true, hard and fast lectionary following church, you could use this because nobody would know it's from year C. So it's still a possibility, I think, for any year if you're not following the lectionary faithfully all the time. And same thing for the next one, Known and Called, is also a lectionary-based one for year B. And really this one is based on, there are stories in the Epiphany season. A lot of times the lectionary is pointing towards who is Jesus and people finding out who Jesus is. And so that one is also sort of about who is Jesus, who is this person that we follow. Now, you can also use Anytime series in the Worship Design Studio. I'm going to click on that, and these are series that I specifically created for certain times of the year, but I think they could be adapted for any time of the year. So you're going to find a whole lot of stuff in here, 27 of them. So for instance, the one that I created for fall called Moving Out of Scarcity, which is a wordplay on scarcity, you could really do that any time of the year. Imagine the people of God. So there's just a lot here that you could use any time of the year. And certainly Epiphany Plus is a season to use an Anytime series because it's really an ordinary time. Most people don't call it Epiphany Plus season. I just like to use it as a season, as a chunk of time, but it really is ordinary time. So you could use a lot of these in any of these Anytime series. Okay, so last thing we want to do here before we run out of time is to go back into the seasons and series, and I'm going to show you some other ideas or where you can find other ideas. Here I'm going back into the Epiphany Plus page down here at the bottom, and I'm going to go into that flip book that is the Materials Year A. Open that up. Certainly Epiphany is a season of light. All right. So in every one of these, I have a podcast with, which is a recording of a brainstorming session with 3 other nationally known experts. So for 3 years, for every lectionary cycle, I did this. It was myself, a nationally known preacher, theologian, a nationally known visual artist, and music person. And we sort of acted as a team, brainstorming about different themes for the season. Some lectionary, some non-lectionary. And so when you're a member of the Worship Design Studio, you come here to this flip book, you click on this big round button, and it opens up a podcast. And you hear about an hour's worth of us brainstorming various different ideas for the season. So you can also see that as a transcript, a written transcript, so that you can read it, glance through it rather than listen to it. Although I recommend that you listen to at least 1 or 2 of them because it's really the energy and the fun that we have brainstorming that I'm trying to model. Hopefully your team can learn to do that as well. Because that's the fun of working in a team, is that brainstorming, doing some of those brainstorming things. All right, so also in this document, you know what, I want to read you a quote. I try to pull a quote for every season. And this is from a book called Skiing Zen. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Spiritual Adventures in the Snow. I'm a skier, and it's really a spiritual practice for me. And so I was asked by a publishing company to write about that. And so I did. And I did a lot of research with a lot of other skiers and some extreme skiers and some Olympians about skiing as spiritual practice. And Rick Phipps wrote this wonderful book called Skiing Zen. And he talks about that moment when you're skiing, when he's skiing, where he kind of goes in the zone. And epiphany, I think, to use that sort of metaphor of epiphany, as in discovery, as in wonder, as in the holy breaking through. Really, this quote of his really reminded me of that. He said, "When the crystalline moment does approach, and time slows down, and all becomes deliciously vivid around you. Resist the temptation to retain or analyze your awareness. Just let it happen. Go with it, flow with it, bathe in it joyfully. Without trying, you will understand it best. And that's, to me, kind of what an epiphany is like. It's like this moment when some understanding happens, and it's so mysterious how that understanding happened. But it's something that's so wonderfully mysterious and part of the human experience. That epiphany moment. And so part of, I think, what we want to encourage in the Epiphany season is that love of the mysterious, the love of the mystical. Wonderful time to do that. You know, because it starts out with the Magi and this mystical experience of the star and following the star. Just wonderful mystical moments. And so Epiphany can be a season where we're really open to the awe and wonder of it all. So, turning the page, so what I have in these flip books is a little bit of, interesting historical notes about the season. The Greek meaning of Epiphany is to manifest or to show. Epiphany really is older than Christmas in terms of the liturgical year. Epiphany was a time par excellence for baptisms. So especially baptism of the Lord Sunday is a great Sunday for baptisms, for either doing baptisms or remembering our baptism. Now this morning I just did a members-only webinar, and we looked at the dramatic arts, and specifically within that, how to enhance our baptismal rituals or our remembrance of baptism rituals. So those of you who are members of the Worship Design Studio, I'm going to be posting that soon. And lots of great ideas in there around enhancing how we remember our baptism. And the Epiphany season, especially Epiphany, Baptism of the Lord, is a perfect time to do that. So the early church was preparing catechumens for baptism. That's how we think, that's one of the theories about how Advent was developed. But then they also made an 8-week post-Epiphany season. An octave, they call it, an 8-week celebration appears. And usually what that means is that they are continuing to instruct those who have been baptized on Epiphany. So a time of catechesis. So there is some precedence for this post-Epiphany time to be a season. All right, so we have some interesting, other interesting historical facts. Of course, for Orthodox Christians, that's a really important time, Epiphany is. And so they do a blessing of water, both water inside the church that they'll use throughout the year for baptisms, but also going out to an outside body of water is a terrific thing to do. If you live near a body of water, that's especially great. I look out in my office here, I'm looking out at all of the boats, sailboats in this marina, and what a wonderful opportunity and ministry it would be. Maybe I'll offer it this year. Maybe I'll do it, is to offer a blessing of the water and the boats and all of the sojourns that will happen in those boats for the year. Wow, cool. That's the second time today I've had an epiphany during a podcast or during a webinar. Okay, cool. So then I offer some theological images to consider as themes. Manifest of God's presence in Christ, revealing for all to see, adoration, recognition, guided by light. These are all some theological images you could consider. Some more on the next page. Finding, searching, discovering, power in the powerlessness. Epiphany interprets the nativity globally in light of the whole world. So what does it mean that Christ has come, Christ's presence, or that we are called to be Christ's presence in the world? Blessing of water, Holy Spirit. There's just a lot of, just rich themes that you could use. Now, in every one of these flip books for each one of the seasons, right here we have about 20 years worth of thematic ideas for Epiphany. So my goal is that you are never left feeling like you're starting from scratch, that you never feel like you're alone in figuring out something really meaningful and memorable for the season. All right, so then I have an at-a-glance list of what we brainstormed on the podcast with my guest experts. And this particular podcast, I really hope you listen to it, was really fun, and we came up with tons of ideas. An Emancipation Proclamation, So What, Beyond the Manger, Doorways to the Future, Imperceptible Happenings, Under the Surface. SAD, Spiritual Affective Disorders, because it's the middle of winter, so some people are affected by less sunlight, and so we can also say some of us are affected by not enough spiritual practice in our lives. Radiating Light, More Light, Bread, Bath, and Beyond. That's where this idea had its genesis, and then I later developed that. So just a lot of ideas here. If you can't figure out an idea from looking at these 2 pages, I can't imagine. So that's what that is. I do a little bit of my exegesis with the lectionary in here, showing you what themes I see working in all 4 of the books. So I look at one book at a time: Hebrew Scriptures, Psalms, Epistles, and Gospels, and just sort of pull out some of the themes that I see coming up. In the Worship Design Studio, we don't believe that lectionary preaching is antithetical to series preaching, that you can find series through the lectionary, as I think I've probably demonstrated already. So there's just a lot of ideas to be had here. Well, that's what's in the Worship Design Studio. I hope that my describing these things has given you some ideas, even if you're not a member of the Worship Design Studio, that it will jumpstart your desire to get working on the Epiphany Plus season. Again, I want to give you the idea that the more you're ready for what comes after Christmas, the more you can enjoy what you're doing during Advent and Christmas.